Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:06 on a busy Monday morning in your nation's capital. Thanks for tuning in here to O'Connor and Company. If you did see Snow White, by the way, I'm kidding. Nobody saw Snow White. Coming up at 8:05, Gary Higgins, a member of the Virginia House of Delegates, and at 8:35, Christian Toto, who is a film critic and has his perspective not just on the quality of the film, but also the business side of it and this economic disaster for Disney. Will Disney ever learn their lesson? Probably not. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie. Are you pining away and waiting for your prince to come?
I found mine long ago, but I won't be
stalk
saying Snow White. He did not
Weird.
stalk me. Weird.
You know, one man's stalking is another man's hot pursuit.
That's right.
It's
one way to look at it.
That's my defense when I get called into court. Joining us now, speaking of getting called into court, he's our legal analyst and a former U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia. He is Joe DiGenova. Good morning, Joe. How are you, sir?
Good morning. I'm fine.
I want to play a little bit of Kash Patel yesterday. He was on Fox News. Of course, this is his first media appearance as FBI director. I want to go to cut 26, if I could. This has to do with the geographic location of the FBI and the bulk of its personnel. Listen.
If you take the national capital region, as the folks around Washington, D.C. call it, the 50-mile radius around Washington, D.C., we have 11,000 employees for the FBI in that 50-mile radius, give or take. And a third of the crime does not happen in this region. A large portion of one of my priorities, fighting violent crime, crushing narco traffickers, stopping fentanyl overdoses, is happening in any town USA across this country. And they need resources in the form not just of money, but manpower.
Joe, can you break down a little bit about this shift that happened at the FBI when you were the U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia under Ronald Reagan, and you were focused on legal issues all through the 90s and the 2000s and such and 2010s? The FBI looked different. Was it Robert Mueller who sort of reoriented the way personnel were handled and located and the focus that the FBI took through that agency?
Yes. Mueller decided to turn it into an intelligence operation instead of a law enforcement operation. Once that occurred, the training and the focus of the individuals becoming FBI agents changed. He certainly had certain key categories that he left in place of crime fighting, but they became more and more an intelligence agency, and they became more and more a reflection of what happened when Hoover ran the place, and it became a spy network against Americans. And it was really a tragic mistake by Bob Mueller. The tragedy of his mistakes continued into the time he became a special counsel, but that's another story. It was just it was a decision to become an intelligence agency, and it was a big mistake.
What do you think of Director Patel's message here and this refocus that he seems to be indicating he wants the agency to take?
Well, I think it's absolutely correct. I mean, you have to refocus the agency, retrain the agency, and they've already gotten rid of a huge number of the people responsible for the corruption of the FBI during and before the first Trump administration, people who engaged in a conspiracy to deny Donald Trump his civil rights. He's gotten rid of most of those people. But now he wants to get rid of people inside the building and put them out in the hustings, so to speak, and have them start doing real law enforcement work. I think it's a great idea. They can maintain all of the intelligence gathering they need for foreign counterintelligence, and they have plenty of people to do that. New York, for example, the Southern District of New York is the best example of the biggest problem the agency had. It became a political Soviet-style apparatchik arm of the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District. Their job was to protect Joe Biden. It was a disgraceful period in the history of the FBI. They spent their time going after people they thought were enemies of Biden and covered up crimes by the Biden family. It will go down in history as the single worst period in the history of the FBI. It dwarfs Hoover's mistakes.
Just a quick follow-up on that, though.
And that happened under Chris Wray, by the way. That was Chris Wray, a 100% absolute disaster as an FBI director. Thank you, George W. Bush.
Defenders of the FBI and that new approach that they took will say, well, listen, this was a post 9/11 world. FBI was under great criticism for not effectively coordinating with other intelligence agencies to recognize and investigate the terrorists before they actually carried out their crime. And so it was understandable that since the bigger threat during the global war on terror was radical Islamic terrorism, and that required more of a counterterrorism and intelligence focus, that it made sense that the FBI would reorient in that way. Is that an appropriate sort of explanation for what happened here, or was there something more insidious involved?
No, that's just BS. That was, the Bureau had everything that was needed. For example, the guys that were learning how to crash planes were actually known by the FBI. You'll recall, going back and look at 9/11, one of the great failures was the FBI failure to analyze properly facts they had in their control, which was the guys who were learning how to take off and land planes. And they didn't do anything about it. There was a very famous FBI whistleblower, a woman, who said that she got smacked down when she tried to bring to the attention of higher up what was going on with these guys training about how to basically take off planes that didn't particularly care about how to land them. Should have been a little clue. I think what happened inside the Bureau was they fell in love with themselves, which is very, very common among bureaucracies. The CIA, for example, at the time of the Kennedy assassination, was in love with trying to overthrow its own government. Under Allen Dulles, the CIA became a monstrous entity. This happens. This is what government, when you don't pay attention to it and you don't monitor it and you don't sit on it like a giant, it will become corrupted, and it will try to destroy you. That's what happened with the FBI. It became a mess. They had plenty of counterintelligence capabilities. They didn't miss 9/11. They misdiagnosed the information they had in their very hands. They were lazy. They had people who weren't properly trained, and they lost it. It was the FBI's fault, by the way. They are responsible for 9/11, the FBI.
Joe, I want to switch over. I feel like a one-trick pony here because I feel like I ask you the same question every week, but it looks like another, this these out-of-control district judges. The U.S. District Judge Anna Reyes, she issued this preliminary injunction last week, blocking the Pentagon from enforcing Trump's EO on transgender folks serving in the military. She said in her order that the order contains language that is unabashedly demeaning and stigmatizes transgender persons as inherently unfit.
She quoted a lyric from Hamilton.
Yes, she quoted a lyric of Hamilton. Secretary Hegseth has given quite a response to that. But is this just now the new reality that anytime there's an executive order, then we have to go through the courts, and then eventually turn down, that's delay. I mean, should we just give up on thinking that these judges are ever going to be put in their place, or there's ever going to be any kind of action from the Supreme Court or from Congress, or anyway?
Well, John, first of all, John Roberts, who went out of his way to engage in a fight over impeachment when he should have kept his mouth shut. As I said before, just shut up and rule. Right. What he should have done when he had the case before them about whether or not a federal judge could authorize the expenditure of $2 billion that the executive felt was fraught with fraud. If Roberts really wanted to do something to shut up the judges below and get their attention, he should have voted with the 4 conservative members of the court to overturn the order by that federal judge to ordering the Secretary of the Treasury to spend $2 billion that the Secretary thought was filled with fraud. The answer is, I don't know what Chief Justice Roberts is going to do. He actually has the fate of the Supreme Court and the rest of the judiciary in his hands. Either he wakes up and understands that he has to put a stop to this by issuing some orders and not waiting until this thing gets out of hand and causes a real constitutional crisis, then it's going to be a bad scene for a long time. Yeah. Roberts has abandoned his role. He should have ruled. This isn't a close call. This issue of whether or not they should have stopped the spending of that $2 billion, which, by the way, is never going to get spent. I can tell you right now, he can have his order and order it to be done. It ain't going to happen. Those $2 billion are never going out the door.
All right, we continue with more with Joe DiGenova in just a moment here as we have more decisions that the judges have blocked here, temporarily at least. and what the Trump administration's next steps will be. That's in a moment. First, though, it's 7:50.
WMAL, making sense of the news, live.
Continuing with Joe DiGenova, this judge's decision to block, temporarily at least, the Defense Department's determination that individuals in uniform who identify as transgender and require hormones, require various health and psychological treatments for whatever transitionary procedures have taken place, make them unfit for service right now. This is being likened to racism in the military. You know, when Woodrow Wilson resegregated the military, is there a argument here that a judge, based on civil rights concerns, has an appropriate role here, Joe?
No. The military is separate and distinct from all other type of government employment. There is something called the Commander-in-Chief. It's in the Constitution. It's in Article 2. It's about the President of the United States, who is the unitary executive. There's only one executive branch official mentioned in the Constitution. That's the President. And the President is the Commander-in-Chief. And he makes decisions about the military. And the federal judges have absolutely no role. I want to underscore no role whatsoever in how the military is run, how it is manned and womaned, and how it is funded. This judge, Judge Reyes, did one of the stupidest things in the history of the federal judiciary by ruling the way she did. Now, she is a lesbian, and she's entitled to be whatever she wants. But she's not supposed to bring that onto the bench. That's supposed to be irrelevant. Well, apparently it isn't with her, because everything you read in that opinion is a screed by someone who doesn't understand their proper place in the constitutional scheme. She's going to be overturned, but it's going to take a while because that's the way the system works. Although the administration has asked for a temporary stay, I have no idea what the status of that is in the D.C. Circuit. D.C. Circuit has a bunch of these pending up there, and they haven't done anything about them. So the war continues, and it's ugly,
Joe,
and it's unfortunate, and it's all Chief Justice Roberts' fault.
Yeah. Kristen Welker at Meet the Press has informed all of us that this is apparently a constitutional crisis because Trump complains about these decisions and fights to have them set aside or appeals them, that is, in fact, a constitutional crisis. Joe, again, I'm just asking you an objective question. Don't mean to lead the witness here, but is it, in fact, a constitutional crisis for someone to use the court system legally to challenge a judge's decision? Or is it, in fact, a constitutional crisis when a judge oversteps their role in the judiciary and meddles in the executive branch? You tell me.
No, it's the way the system is supposed to work. This isn't a crisis. This is everyday Constitution, 7 days a week. This is the way it works. You lose, you appeal. Kristen Welker, of course, is making Tim Russert turn over in his grave. Poor Tim. I mean, I remember in the days when I used to Meet the Press, and Tim would be there, and he was just the greatest thing that ever came down the pike. He was a real journalist, even though he had worked for Pat Moynihan and was a Democrat. He got rid of those robes and became a great journalist. He made Meet the Press what it was, and now he has a bunch of these. You should pardon the expression. The seven dwarfs who have followed him are just absolutely awful.
I think that's actually a more apt description of George Stephanopoulos, but I'll let it go. Joe DiGenova, thank you for joining us.
He counts too.
Thank you, sir.
Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:37, O'Connor and Company here on this Monday, 24th day of March. Thanks for joining us. Coming up at 8:05, Gary Higgins, who's a member of the House of Delegates in Virginia, recap the legislative session. And then at 8:35, Christian Toto, film critic, with all the inside scoop and dirt on Snow White. So apparently was named Snow White because she was born in the middle of a blizzard. I had no idea. Did you have any idea that?
No.
They just make stuff up.
They do.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's the whole point of fiction. It is a fairy tale, after all. You got to make stuff up.
Well, they could at least stick to the
now that I
original
think
fairy
about it.
tale. When everyone was racist.
That's Julie Gunlock. I am Larry O'Connor. I don't think it's racist if a story is set in Germany and everyone looks Germanic.
Careful.
I'm just saying. I know. Germany has a troubled history with such things. I should probably not wade into it. Not making a case. All right, let's move on. Bill Maher. Everyone says that Bill Maher is getting red-pilled. Here's the thing that people need to know about Bill Maher. He's not very smart. He doesn't like most liberals who have a platform, a microphone, a television camera, and the ability to distribute their ideas and their opinions to a very large audience and get paid very well for it. He doesn't really follow the news and current events very much.
No. And, I think all of us, we have a sort of love-hate relationship with Bill Maher. He'll say something that we agree with, and the next week he'll say something that we disagree with. So he's never...
Yeah.
And the other thing is when he does say something that we agree with, like he calls the left out on their crap, he'll say something like, the left's really, gone overboard here. And then he'll say, Trump's a Nazi. But I think the left really has overreached.
Don't get me wrong.
He's always got to put that disclaimer in there, like, hey, I still have street cred here. Don't hate me.
Well, take a look at the sort of state of where the Democrats are right now. Bill Maher is a perfect example. The guy is a left-wing liberal Democrat, all right?
Yeah.
He's an atheist. He's a pot smoker.
Yep.
He's your typical Hollywood
womanizer,
liberal, right? Big-time womanizer. Mm-hmm. So make no mistake. This is he actually represents well exactly the state of the Democratic Party, especially considering the fact that he has become sort of the target of some of the more radical leftists who continue to want to treat the president of the United States as a war criminal. Yep. And someone that you shouldn't platform. Don't legitimize him, right? There's that whole thing now that he's back to being an illegitimate president. Wait till you hear what Rosie O'Donnell had to say about that on Irish television. I thought she was going away. So here's Bill Maher talking about the fact that he was invited to the White House and he plans to go to the White House to interview Trump. Listen to this. Is cut 27.
Kid Rock was here a couple of weeks ago, and he said, I want you to meet Trump. He said, I'm going to take you to the White House. So now we're going to do that.
I think that's a good
there will be
conversation.
lots of people on the left who will be like, how dare you talk to this man? It's like,
Yeah.
you. I'm not playing this game that you mean girls play.
Yes.
Where like, oh, you know what? You can't sit at my lunch table because I'm just not talking to you. Not talking to you, you lost the election. Who do you think you have to talk to? It's one thing if you win it.
Yeah.
It's another thing if you lose it.
You got to start talking to people.
Have to talk. And I see Gavin Newsom is doing this now. He's changed his tune. He's got a podcast, and the first guest was Charlie Kirk.
I thought that was,
I
thought that was brilliant. He
mentioned me. He said, like, I'm noticing what Bill does, talks to both sides, like is left-leaning, but not afraid to criticize the people on his team. Like, we got to get more of this going.
This
has to become the center. This has to become a real center. Right now, it's like it's a few lonely islands that need to become a bigger sandbar.
Yeah. No, for real. You're right. Like, it needs to be normalized.
He's the center, Julie. He's the center. Didn't this guy have Jane Fonda on a month ago saying, I think I may quit. I don't want to go through Trump again.
Right.
Remember?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's the center. Give me a break.
All right. Fine. In fact, on his that's his podcast where he sits in a chair and drinks and smokes pot and talks to. He's talking to a comedian who's a little bit more right of center. Here's Bill Maher on his panel show talking about where things stand with the Democrats. Cut 28.
California is projected to lose 3 seats, New York 2, also going to lose a seat, Minnesota, Oregon, Rhode Island, Illinois, all blue states. Who's getting these? Texas, Florida, Idaho, and Utah. I mean, this looks like game over, and the reason why people are voting with their feet is a lot of what your book is about.
Yeah.
Taxes and regulation. I certainly been screaming about it forever. I did 3 years with a sign here that said, how long is it going to take me to get my solar hooked up? 3 years. Talking about it on television in this state. You couldn't do it. This state has almost 400,000 regulations. I just put in a new roof because the fire, I thought, let's get a roof that's not going to burn up. 2 inspections. Why are you inspecting my roof? It's my roof. If it falls on me, that's my problem. And we're taxed more than any other state. People are leaving these kind of states for places where they're not, they feel the heavy breath of government on them. It's not that hard for Democrats to understand this, but they seem to be incapable of doing anything about it.
So we poll this. They're leaving on cost of living. That's all part of it. They're leaving because they can't afford homes. And it's a huge, not just political problem, those numbers you just gave. After 2030, if that holds, a Democrat could win every state Kamala Harris won, win Michigan, win Pennsylvania, and win Wisconsin, and lose the presidential election, right? The blue wall would no longer be enough for them to win. And you have to take that.
You mean they could win those 3 states and still
lose the presidential? That's how bad it is, right?
Yeah, that's Ezra Klein, by the way, who you heard Bill Maher refer to his book. His book posits that the Democrats have hurt themselves because they haven't been good at running things. He doesn't suggest that they should get out of the business of running things and let people run their own lives. Instead, he says, no, your ideas are great. You're just not good at executing them.
Yeah, and the voters just don't understand. The voters just don't get it,
Yeah.
Larry. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Bill Maher is speaking for a lot of people. It's like, this state is ruined now. You've ruined California. Maryland is going down the exact same path.
Virginia.
Right now.
Yeah, without Governor Youngkin. I mean, if we don't win this governorship, it's the same thing.
So what are Democrats going to do? They got to right the ship. They got to fix things. Well, apparently the solution is Bernie, AOC, and Tim Walz. We'll share that with you in just a moment at 7:44.
WMAL's Vince Colonnese, weekdays at noon on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
You remember last week, Tim Walz was doing a big round of appearances. He's doing rallies. He's apparently the front runner for the presidential nomination. Here he was, cut 29, cheering on losses in an American manufacturing company, Tesla.
Saying on my phone, I don't know, some of you know this on the iPhone, they've got that little stock app. I added Tesla to it to give me a little boost during the day. 225 and dropping.
So he obviously got a lot of criticism about that, and so over the weekend, being the tower of jello that he is, he won't even stand up for himself and take a stand and defend his own bad takes. Apparently, he got the message that maybe it was a bad thing for him to root for a stock to fail when his own state's pension plans are invested in it. Here's cut 31.
This guy bugs me in a way that is probably unhealthy, and but I have to be careful about being a smart. So I was making a joke. These people have no sense of humor. They are the most literal people. But my point was they're all mad, and I, said something I didn't, probably shouldn't have.
Oh, wait, so hold on. So he admits he shouldn't have said it. No apology, by the way.
Right.
He admits he shouldn't have said it, but it's our fault for being too sensitive and taking it too literally. I'm sorry, is there a metaphorical way you root for somebody's stock price to go down and hurt everyday Americans?
Yeah.
He's such a moron. But I like that he's gone from being a knucklehead to being a smartass as he acknowledges what an idiot he is. Meanwhile, he's performing to not arenas, little theaters full of Democrat activists, many of whom are paid to get in there. Meanwhile, AOC and Bernie Sanders are doing a tour of their own through many states that apparently either look like a presidential ticket being formed, or maybe Bernie's trying to promote AOC to run against Chuck Schumer. But it's a very real political movement, apparently. During the event, AOC apparently said that we need a Democratic Party that farts harder for us. So I guess she's endorsing Eric Swalwell. I don't know. That's what she said. Here, listen. You be the judge. Right. You tell me what you hear.
We need a Democratic Party that fights harder for us too.
She did say poor thing.
Yeah. I mean, I heard what I heard, and she's not wrong.
As the mother, as the mother of 3 teenage boys, I hear that word a lot, and she did indeed say it. I can confirm.
Thank you very much. So this is where they are right now, and they still don't really know. You know, the only energy in the room right now is migrating toward the AOC wing, and there are very real voices now saying that she should either run to challenge Chuck Schumer, which would be a remarkable thing to see. Chuck Schumer is ripe for a primary challenge, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Or that she should actually just run for president in 28, and well, that would be a. I want to see that debate. I want to see AOC versus JD Vance, or yeah, right, or Ron DeSantis, or anybody else who's able to govern. One other moment here. Bernie Sanders was asked by John Carl. They did a Good Morning America thing, right? And Jonathan Carl asked Bernie Sanders about whether AOC should run against Chuck Schumer. And this is really, Bernie Sanders is the big, I'm the tough guy and I'm defiant and I'll speak my mind and I'll say whatever I need to say. But he absolutely freaked out on this question because, you see, Bernie Sanders is, when all is said and done, a political animal. And Bernie Sanders knows one thing, that if he speaks out against Chuck Schumer or is in some way seen as supporting a challenge to Chuck Schumer, then he'll lose his position with the Democrat leadership, right? He's a chairman of it. Well, he's a ranking member on a committee now. You got to play nice with the leader. You get, lots of benefits by being on Chuck Schumer's good side. So listen to him explode at John Carl here upon the question.
You're joining the Senate? Would you like to see her joining the Senate?
Right now, we have, as I said, just a whole lot of people in the Congress. Okay, Jonathan, thanks.
Wait, I got one more. This is important.
Well, I asked you.
Okay.
You want to do nonsense, do nonsense.
No.
I don't want to talk about inside the Beltway stuff. I got 32,000 people.
I was just asking you about AOC because she was out there with you.
No, fine, but I don't want to talk about this.
I don't want to talk about your nonsense. Your inside the Beltway nonsense. You want to play around? Go play around with somebody else. Isn't that amazing?
That is. Wow.
It's like he's out there rallying with AOC. He's doing all this. We got to change the direction. You want a party that fights harder, Friday. We know what he's doing. He's undermining Chuck Schumer.
That's right.
All he does is say, you want to see her run for the Senate. That's nonsense. I'm leaving. I'm done with this interview. At least Bernie Sanders has something in common with us. We hate ABC News.
That's
It's
right.
7:53.